You're listening to You and Yours. It's 13 minutes past 12. Relatives often complain of revenge evictions from care homes when they have complained about the quality of care. New research from King's College London has found that nearly 6,000 people were given notices to leave care homes in England last year. That's 1 in every 70 residents. Homes only have to give residents 28 days to go, and some gave even less time for people to find somewhere else. Dr. Caroline Green led that research. Dr. Green, tell me first of all then, why did you want to look into this?
Hi, good afternoon. Yes, well, so we've known about this problem for many years. You've reported on it too, I believe. But we have been keeping on hearing stories, the same stories over and over again. So, for example, the Relatives and Residents Association, a charity that supports families in care homes, they have a helpline and they keep hearing of the same problem. So we have decided, speaking to colleagues and to the Relatives and Residents Association, that we want to understand the circumstances and the scale and the impact of this issue more widely. So that's why we decided to do this study.
Could you tell me then, it have to be broad brush, obviously, it's a big report, it's a big subject. Mm-hmm. What were you able to find out?
Well, so first of all, we got some statistics from the Care Quality Commission, trying to get an idea of the scale of how many notices there were. We also interviewed families in care homes, so 16 families who had been subject to a notice to leave. And we have spoken to some care home managers and providers as well. And we looked at 27 reports from the local local government and social care ombudsman, trying to get a better idea. So we found, first of all, when we go to the data, that roughly between October 2021 and September 2022, the CQC had around 6,000 of such notices reported to them. So it's quite a big scale of people who have been subject to a notice to leave in care homes. And then we've also found that the impact of receiving such a notice can be really detrimental to families in care homes. So those are some of the very core findings, but we can go into more detail.
We've had many listeners contact us over the years because they have been told to find another home for a relative after they raised concerns about some aspect of the care. Last year we spoke to Anne about her mum. She was sent to a care home from hospital at the end of the first lockdown in 2020, and she was facing eviction from that care home when she died. Now, here's what Anne told us at the time.
She'd had quite a few admissions for different things, including pneumonia, COVID, and then finally with a broken hip. After that, she'd lost all her mobility, so she was unable to go home. It was very difficult for her. She didn't want to go into a home. She was very independent and very private. So the idea of having to go into a care home and being completely reliant on strangers was not good anyway. Because she was still testing positive for COVID, she was also under COVID isolation a lot of the time. She was just very, very distressed and very vulnerable, really, because she wasn't good at asking for support. You know, her idea was to just keep quiet and be left alone.
What led to the home serving notice on your mum and telling her that she would have to go, or telling you that she would have to go?
The visiting arrangements at the home were that you could have a half-hour visit, but it was in a designated visiting room. Mum found this incredibly difficult because she had to be hoisted into a wheelchair. She found the wheelchair incredibly uncomfortable. She was incontinent, and that added to her feelings of vulnerability. She was just so incredibly upset and in pain and in discomfort. So I began to ask for bedroom visits. Eventually they agreed to a half-hour bedroom visit a week, which was a strict half-hour. And then as a accumulation of all this, eventually they sent a letter asking her to leave the home. They cited that I'd been breaking infection control regulations, but I honestly don't know how I could have done that because I was following all their regulations to the letter.
What happened then? She must have been very distressed to be told in that condition and at that age that she had to leave.
No one ever told her they were wanting her to leave because it would have just panicked her. It would have just destroyed her to think they were trying to get rid of her.
Did you as a family still have that threat of her being evicted hanging over her? I know that she died before it could happen.
Yes, they paused the notice and then they renewed it. So it was actually due to expire, and she died about a week before that.
Were you allowed to be with her in her room at the end?
They rang us an hour or so before she died to say that we needed to come in. When I did get there and get in, I think they said that she was just taking her last breath as I came into the room. So no, I didn't see her before she died. The last time I saw her was my half-hour visit with her a couple of days before.
Well, Anne has since complained to the independent arbitrator, the local government and social care ombudsman, and her complaint was upheld. And tell us what the ombudsman said then, on what grounds your complaint about the care home was upheld in the end.
Hello, Winifred.
Hi.
Hi. Yes, they upheld the complaints on the grounds of poor record keeping. So basically, they said that the care home had not kept adequate records about their communication with me, about the things that happened during that period. But the other side of that was they said that because they didn't have the records, they couldn't really adjudicate on anything else about it. One of the things I complained about was their visiting regime, and the ombudsman seemed to think that was outside their areas of powers.
So they were not able to say conclusively, because the evidence just wasn't there, whether they asked your mum to leave because you'd wanted to see her more.
No, they weren't. No, they just said there was poor record keeping and there wasn't really enough evidence to find against them in any other way.
Dr. Caroline Green, it's obviously very difficult, isn't it, to prove that someone's been asked to leave because complaints have been made about something to do with a home. And the regulator, the Care Quality Commission, promised on this programme 6 years ago now to track these notices to quit and why people were getting them. So were you able to find out in your research, you said you went to them, the regulator, how many of these evictions might be related to complaints about poor quality of care?
Well, no, actually. So what we did find out is that the majority of notices are being given for a change in care needs. So mostly care homes will say that we cannot cater for the needs anymore of a particular resident.
That's still distressing to be told that, isn't it, if you have to find another home within 28 days?
Absolutely. And I think, that's the most important point. Quite often, it's not actually the notice as such that is the biggest problem. It's the procedures and the circumstances around it. How have people been told about this? How are they supported once they've received it to find another care home? So that's the biggest issue for many of the people we spoke to.
But were the Care Quality Commission able to pin it down then? When you got their data, did it reveal? It revealed, as you said, that the vast majority, the reason given was that the care needs had changed. I guess no care home is going to admit it asked someone to leave because they regard their relatives as a nuisance.
So exactly. So care homes can then will have to also write down on a form of why they have given such a notice. But the Care Quality Commission was not able to give us statistics on what the different reasons were. And that's because it's the way that they have this data. So they said it's qualitative data and they'd have to go through loads and loads of data to really pin down different reasons other than changing care needs.
So do you think they should just do that?
I think so. But then, also we don't really know. I mean, care homes, they can say why they have given a notice. And I'm not suggesting here that care homes are lying. I think that most care homes do actually, they're truthful and they're trying to provide really good care. But what people say and what really the reasons were, we don't really know. So I think we should mostly concentrate on why is this happening? These notices should be the absolute exception. They should be a matter of last resort. But why are there so many then? And are there ways of avoiding them in the first instance? And if not, how can we support people to make sure that the experience isn't so traumatic?
We spoke to the Care Quality Commission and they told us, as you said, that most people are served notice by a provider who says it is due to a change in their care needs and that mostly it is done in discussion with that person and their family. But they say they're aware that's not always the case and that they have invited you and campaigners for relatives and residents to meet with them and to talk about it.
Yes, exactly. They've invited us to come and speak through how they're currently supporting care homes and their procedures afterwards to see what can be improved. So that's we welcome that.
And what do you think they should do, the Care Quality
Look,
Commission?
I think they should be keeping better records. And to be honest, I think there should be some adjudication and some outside scrutiny, because if you are given a notice to quit, there is no mediation, there's no scrutiny of that. So there is the massive potential there for a care home to use a notice to quit to deal with a situation that maybe should be dealt with in a different way.
Well, let me bring in someone who's dealt with this very recently. Kate had to find a new home for both of her parents after they were asked to leave. They're both in their 80s. They both have dementia. Kate, what happened to you?
Hi.
Hi.
Yes, no, my parents were both in a care home together. My mum had been in there since the beginning of COVID, and my father had joined her a number of months before they were given notice. I had no idea that this was going to happen. A third party person got involved, the dolls assessor and a social worker. And basically the dolls assessor rang me out of the blue, having tried to get in, and had told me in no uncertain terms that I should move them.
The dolls assessor, that they look after people who have to be confined for their own safety. Is that right? Yeah, sorry.
Yes. And so when I rang my mum's social worker at the time, the social worker didn't even realise that my mum had been moved to a sister care home of this care home company. And so immediately as well said to me, you need to move them. So I was in the situation, having even seen my mum really in her care home environment for about 13 months, to suddenly be finding myself in a situation where I needed to find somewhere for both my parents. And I went round 11 care homes in 3 days. The social worker that I had at the time categorically told me not to mention it to the care home until I had found somewhere new that I was going to give them notice. I found somewhere new that I liked, and that care home had to then get in touch with the old care home to find the care plans for my parents to understand whether they could meet their needs. And I gave them permission to ring the care home, and by the end of the day, I had an email giving me notice to both my parents.
Yeah.
And unlike Anne and Caroline, who have said that there should be reasons, there was absolutely no reason given in this email at all.
Kate, thanks so much for coming on and telling us about that. It's obviously a very distressing story. Thank you. And thanks to Dr. Carolyn Green and to Anne. Now, there are a lot more people buying second-hand from charity shops these days.